We will start now. In this class, we will take up the important subtopic from Strawson, which has been repeatedly asked in UPSC Civil Services. In last class, I have covered the basic philosophical theory of Strawson, and I told that in next class I will be taking up the uh, main topic on which the questions have been asked. So today I am doing the same thing. Now, the main topic which has been repeatedly asked from Strawson is basically his theory of persons. Now, in fact, this was also discussed in previous class, but I thought that since it has been repeatedly asked, so we will take up in more detail in next class. So that's what today I'm taking up in this class. See, Strawson was a British philosopher of 20th century. His main book, Individuals and Essay in Descriptive Metaphysics, was his main book, and he was basically proponent of descriptive metaphysics. Now, what he wanted, Strawson basically analyzed the philosophical views before him, and then now what was first, let us understand what was the views before him which he wanted to analyze. For example, logical positivists were a school which said, given the verification principle and said that metaphysics is meaningless. Now, Strawson opposed this view. He argued that metaphysics is not meaningless, rather than it is understanding about basic structure of our thinking. So basically, he said that metaphysics is not about understanding the reality, rather than structure of our thinking, understanding of basic structure of our thinking. And that's where the descriptive metaphysics came. So basically, he said that earlier metaphysics, which was declared meaningless or which was not very useful, was revisionary metaphysics. Whereas descriptive metaphysics is quite useful and it should be continued. Why did he make this famous distinction? Let us try to understand that. In fact, all this is, you can say, a preliminary concepts for reaching to the concept of theory of persons. So now let us understand what was the difference between descriptive and revisionary metaphysics, which Strawson came up with. Strawson said that descriptive metaphysics tries to describe how we actually think about the world and analyze the basic concepts we already use. For example, he gave examples. For example, Aristotle, Kant, and himself, they were proponents of descriptive metaphysics. In contrast, revisionary metaphysics tries to change our ordinary view of reality, propose a new structure of the world and reality. Now, the examples which he gave, Plato, he has given the theory of ideas. Descartes has given mind-body dualism theory. Berkeley was proponent of idealism. And if you want to take up example from Indian philosophy, Adi Shankaracharya, he has given Advaita Vedanta philosophy. So he said that these guys are proposing some new structure of reality, which is not correct and which is not the work of metaphysics. Metaphysics only needs to describe. So therefore, Strawson says, ordinary concepts are not illusions. They are the foundations of our thinking. So philosophy should first understand them and not destroy them. Now, Strawson's ontology is based on particulars and universals. Now, what are these particulars and universals? Let us try to understand. He said that universals are properties like redness, goodness, beauty. and particulars are individual things. So he said that among particulars, some are more fundamental particulars, which are called basic particulars. So he he described the basic particular as something that exists in space and time and can be identified independently, helps us identify other things. So these are the qualities of basic particulars which he came up. For example, we identify events, actions, and relations by referring to the objects or persons. So Strawson's claim was that there are two basic particulars. First is material objects and second is persons. Now, what is the main reason for this? He said that because this is there, because without material objects and persons, nothing else can be identified. So they are the basic particulars existing in this world. Therefore, persons are not secondary or derivative, they are fundamental. So this was theory of persons he gave. Now, he said that earlier theories have created some core problem of personhood. What is that? He noticed that we attribute two types of properties to same entity, that is person. What are these two types of properties? One is physical property. Physical property can be, as example, height, weight, color, position, movement, etc. Second is mental properties. What are they? Thinking, feeling, remembering, intending, deciding, etc. But the problem is, why are both physical and mental properties attributed to the same thing? And that is called person. In other words, why there must be an owner of experiences. Why is this owner also has a physical body? So this is the classic mind-body problem, which was earlier enunciated by Descartes and subsequently continued by Spinoza and Leibniz. So basically, he criticized Cartesian dualism and he came up with new theory. Now, what is the Cartesian dualism? Mind and body are two different substances. This was proposed by Descartes and also with some corrections continued by other rationalist philosophers. And it has states, body, physical states, and how they interact. They have proposed their own theory of interaction also. Now, Strawson criticized this theory. He said that if persons are pure minds, how can we identify other persons? Because minds are invisible, we identify others through their bodies only. He further argued that I can attribute mental states to myself only if I can attribute them to others. So, but if others are pure minds, I cannot identify them. Therefore, mind-body dualism will not function properly. Therefore, Cartesian dualism fails to explain personhood. Then another theory he criticized, the theory of no ownership. What is the theory of no ownership? Theory of no ownership was inspired by Wittgenstein and Schlick. They argued that there is no subject of experience. Experience exists without an owner, and I is only a grammatical expression. Now, the reasons which were given, ownership makes sense only if transferable. Experiences are not transferable. Therefore, there is no owner. So this was the theory given by Wittgenstein and Schlick. Now, Strawson criticized this theory also, along with mind-body dualism. What he said, this theory is logically inconsistent. Why? Because saying my experience already assumes an owner, and without a subject, we cannot even talk about experiences. Therefore, no ownership theory is a self-contradictory theory as per Strawson. So, after criticizing no owners theory and mind-body dualism, Strawson came up with a positive theory that persons, theory of persons, or persons as a primitive or basic particular. So Strawson proposes his own solution. What is that? The concept of person is primitive, meaning a person cannot be reduced to mind, a person cannot be reduced to a body, a person cannot be reduced to mind plus body. A person is a unique kind of entity. Thus, I refers to a person, not to mind or body separately. So this is basically theory of persons of Strawson. Now he also came up with M predicates and P predicates. M predicates means material predicates and P means person predicates. To explain the personhood, Strawson introduces two types of predicates, these M predicates and P predicates. What are M predicates? Material predicates applied to objects and persons. For example, tall, heavy, moving, red, sitting, etc. All these qualities are basically material predicates. What are person predicates? This can be applied only to persons. For example, pain, belief, intention, courage, intelligence, smiling, walking, sleeping, all these things, all these activities which are only can be ascribed to persons. So these are person predicates. Now he came up with important point that some person predicates involve feelings, for example, pain. Some involve behavior, for example, walking. Some involve character, for example, honesty. Thus, a person is an entity to which both M predicates and P predicates apply. He came up also how to resolve problem of self and other. He said that we use P predicates in two ways, self-ascription and other ascription. For example, I am in pain is self-ascription, which is direct experience, and he is pain is basically observation of behavior, and this is other ascription. So the problem is that criteria are different, but meaning is same. This creates two extremes, skepticism and behaviorism. Now, Strawson came up with a solution. What is the solution? He came up with logically adequate criteria. He basically rejects both the extremes of skepticism and behaviorism. He says that behavior is not a logically necessary proof of pain, but is a logically adequate criterion, which means that behavior usually indicates inner states, but not always. Therefore, skepticism is avoided and behaviorism is rejected. He also came up with another concept that pure ego is a secondary concept. He says that a disembodied ego is logically possible, but it is not fundamental. And for him, only person is fundamental. So primary reality is person. Even the idea of pure ego depends on the concept of person only. So we can conclude in a way that according to Strawson, a person is a basic particular and a primitive concept. A person is neither mind nor body nor their combination, but a single unified entity to which both mental and physical properties are attributed. Thus, Strawson offers a descriptive, non-dualistic and non-reductionist theory of personhood. And this is actually theory of person of Strawson. Now, we need to critically evaluate this theory. What are the strengths of this theory and what are the weaknesses of this theory? That also is important. We should try to understand, because in any answer writing, that is quite important, and that is, that needs to be written. So what are the strengths of this theory? We have seen that it solves the mind-body problem because dualism is abolished here. Then it avoids skepticism and behaviorism. That also we have seen. It's based on ordinary language, which is very simple to understand. It revives metaphysics as descriptive metaphysics in analytic philosophy. So It also answers basically logical positivists. But then there are a number of criticisms of this theory. What are they? First is criticism by materialists like J.J.C. Smart and D.M. Armstrong. They say that consciousness is equal to brain process. Therefore, pure ego is meaningless concept. Then there are criticisms by dualists like Descartes and Ayer. They say that other minds can be identified through analogy. Therefore, Strawson's critique is quite weak in this regard. Then there is another critique, Bernard Williams. He said, he came up with a very valid point that animals also have mental and physical property. And Strawson fails to clearly distinguish persons from animals. So this is a very, very strong criticism against Strawson's theory of persons actually. Then Locke, he also came up with criticism that personal identity depends on memory, not just personhood. So basically what we see is this Strawson's theory is having some strengths, obviously, because it has avoided dualism, it has revived the metaphysics, and it has come up with theory of persons. But then there are a number of valid criticisms which needs to be addressed. And in subsequent philosophers definitely have come up with various explanations. So this completes today's class. We'll be taking up some other important topic and subject in next class. Now, thank you for joining in this class today. Thank you.